and we love listening to KUNR.
We first opened about 10 years ago. We were small, just a few of us, but it was exciting. I always dreamt of having my own business. It was kind of slow at first, but things started picking up. We had big plans, but in our wildest dreams, we never thought we'd have this much work. Yeah, with so many businesses caught off guard by the storm, Reed Waste Management has never been busier.
What will become of your business after a disaster? Nearly 2/3 of businesses aren't prepared for an emergency, and 40% of businesses that experience a disaster never recover. Make an emergency plan now, before it's too late. For a free online tool that helps you develop an emergency plan to keep your business up and running should disaster strike, visit ready.gov/business. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the American Red Cross, and the Ad Council.
It's 6:24 right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio on this December 2nd day here. This winter weather is certainly, past week now. It's kind of been making its way into our lives. Once again, obviously the day before Thanksgiving, you had the that snow last week. Kind of a wet snow, fortunately. So I guess it wasn't too bad to drive through. I mean, you still had to keep it safe, but at least it wasn't laying too bad on the road. And I guess I was able to drive through it okay. And of course, today you had like like a freezing rain at time. Whatever you want to call it, wintry mix. But fortunately, it didn't do a whole lot to really affect things up here at Kutztown University. So, I wasn't sure. I mean, I wasn't sure if it was going to affect school this morning or whatever, but it didn't really hit until later, and yeah, it wasn't that bad anyways. But nevertheless, I mean, with that in mind, I mean, it's almost the end of the semester now, so I believe next week is finals week. So as far as the all the Tyler Werner Show and all the other shows. Before winter break, that might be all we have as far as the student specialty shows here.
Oh no!
Yeah, so things kind of winding down for the semester here. But we got today's show and next week's show, and then then I guess no shows, I guess, for about a month or so. I'm not sure how it'll all play out when the new semester comes back and everybody comes back and does new shows, or new trainees start, people that were trainees this semester start their shows or whatever. We'll be interested to see how that plays out next semester. But anyways, 610-683-4859 is the number to get in today, to talk about what is going down with the Philadelphia Eagles, what went down on Thanksgiving. Certainly, I mean, it was quite a treat, really, to watch that game and just again watch maybe what was possibly the greatest win in the Chip Kelly era so far, and greatest win of the season, I would say. I mean, you look back at like the Giants game when they beat them 27-0. At the time, that was a huge win. Obviously, maybe at the very moment that maybe that was the best win in a sense, and in this Chip Kelly era. But I don't know, that on Thanksgiving evening down in Dallas, I don't know, that might have taken the cake right there, I guess you could say, as far as best wins. And I mean, not only that, I mean, I'm looking at like power rankings last week. How the NFL power rankings come out on a weekly basis and everything, and there's multiple sources. You go to the ESPN and USA Today or whatever power rankings you want to go to, And a lot of them had, like, the Dallas Cowboys at either 4th or 5th. This was before the game, the Eagles game last week, of course. And, maybe the Eagles were at 7th or 8th, somewhere in that range or whatever. But certainly the Dallas Cowboys by no means looked like the 4th best team in the NFL last week at home, matched up against this Philadelphia Eagles team.
I agree.
And, and that was across the board as well. Credit to the Eagles. I mean, everybody stepped up in this game. And, again, Tony Romo, throwing 2 picks. He didn't look the same. Tony Romo, in the first quarter or so, the Eagles weren't quite getting to him. But then, like, in the second quarter and throughout the game, they were starting to get to Tony Romo. And, of course, the big thing here is that Tony Romo is probably protecting his back and everything. But, whether it be Michael Kendricks or whoever, Fletcher Cox was, I guess a beast in this game.
Beast mode!
You want to talk about a guy who's, maybe in beast mode in this game. Fletcher Cox and that front seven, especially obviously the very front three, I guess, were having a great game. And they, once they're getting to Tony Romo, and it's as if Tony Romo was just like, yeah, you know what, I don't want to take the sack. I'm just going to go down and just let them touch me because, again, he's got that back issue. It's, maybe he's trying to protect himself or whatever, and he can't, he can't find an open receiver or whatever it be. And that was pretty much that. Des Bryant, he had that one big catch that got him down to like the 10-yard line or whatever, but on that, I guess that one drive where the Cowboys were able to run it in with DeMarco Murray. But, again, that was pretty much it for them. They, later on they kick a field goal or whatever, or before that, I guess, but pretty much for the most part here, the Cowboys, which again, they've had quite a running game. They've, that's been their identity. And Des Bryant has been a top 5 receiver in the league this year. Certainly they didn't, this Eagles defense didn't make them look anything like that. So credit to them. And I know some people said some people would note, which, I guess we'll get to later. Might as well get to it now, I guess. We'll just flat out, Des Bryant, of course, said how, the Eagles were cheap in this game. I guess referring to the guys that were covering him, of course. But, and that he looked forward to playing them next time, obviously in Lincoln Financial Field, not long from now already. And I guess you can look at it that way, and that the Eagles secondary got away with some, maybe some pushing and shoving or whatever. But they mentioned Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who, by the way, are, I don't know what they're both. It looks like they're both participants in No Shave November. I don't know, Joe Buck. I couldn't help but kind of chuckle when I saw him. He kind of has like that spotty, like Andrew Luck beard, right? Kind of going right now.
I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, and maybe even like Nick Foles is kind of. It looked like Foles kind of had something like that earlier in the season when he's actually playing. But of course, it looks like recent weeks when they show Foles on the sideline, who did not look too happy about how Mark Sanchez was kind of lighting it up in this game, given that it might be a Foles' one-way ticket out, the way Sanchez played in that game. If Sanchez can continue to at least play as good as Foles has, Foles doesn't look too happy. Who looks like he's been going baby face as of late. But anyways, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, they kind of mentioned very early in this game how the officiating crew of the 17 crews or whatever for the NFL, that this was the most, in effect, the most lenient referee staff of all the 17 staffs in the league. And I mean, if the Eagles secondary was cheap, I mean, I know that the temptation is to say, obviously that's unfair or whatever. I don't know. I mean, maybe if T.O. was playing this game, maybe that's what he would say as far as that. But I look at that and say, and I mean, there's other analysts that would bring this up too, like Brian Baldinger. I've heard him bring it up that early in the game, go ahead and test the waters with the referees and see what you can, get a feel for, I guess, the tone of the game that the referees are going to set, really, and what you're going to be able to get away with and what you're going to be able to, not get away with. And, and maybe, again, maybe this is where some research came in as well, and before the game, and, the Eagles defense, Billy Davis, whatever, they're thinking, okay, this referee staff, they throw the fewest flags in the league, pretty much amongst all the referee corps here, and certainly maybe that was a good thing to take note of, heading into this game. And I think the Eagles, they figured out what they could get away with, and I think throughout the game they pretty much played consistently as far as that goes, as far as Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher and Nate Allen and Malcolm Jenkins goes. I think that's how they played it here, and whether it was cheaper or not, I mean, that referee staff, I guess, allowed cheap to really, fly here in this game. That's, if you can get away with it, with the way that referee staff is, that's fine. But obviously, if you figure out really early in the game that it's a referee staff that's going to be, going to be a little more, obviously a lot more up to speed with that, and is going to throw, flags at will there. I mean, then obviously you don't do that, and you adjust to, maybe adjust the way you're playing the guys and contacting them in the, in the flats or whatever, as far as that goes. So, hey, like I said, if the referees are going to let you get away with it, I mean, that's fine. Now, with that being said, I mean, Jerry Maclin was able to have a field day, and for the most part, and Jordan Matthews looked pretty good once again. So I mean, again, the Eagles were able to pass the ball fine, and Mark Sanchez, I mean, some would say he had perhaps one of his best games of his career, including his days with the New York Jets. Now, Fleming, of course, being a Jets fan, I don't know how much of that Eagles game you watched, or I don't know. I remember you said that maybe after you get done eating, you kind of take a nap or whatever. So I don't know how that played in, but did you I guess for the record, did you see any of the Eagles game, any Mark Sanchez?
No, I didn't. I was actually passed out by that time.
All right.
So.
All right. Well, I mean, hey, nothing wrong with getting some sleep, I guess, but
Nothing like a carb coma.
Yeah, that's true. And especially all that Thanksgiving turkey or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like sweet and sour
yeah,
pork.
but yeah, I mean, I actually I kind of ate a couple hours before the game or whatever. Like I said, my family went to Old Country Buffet because I guess to make it easier this year and not to have to I guess rush and make all the all the food and everything quicker than we normally would. I mean, before the Eagles game, I don't know. I mean, I guess we didn't want to do the, I guess the hurry up offense, in the form of cooking Thanksgiving dinner. But so we decided to go out, and then, but come Eagles game, I still had the energy or whatever. I didn't pass out or anything. So I kind of made sure I didn't. I always kind of make sure I don't eat too much. I just, I remember one Thanksgiving I kind of did, and I kind of just didn't feel good. But But anyways, I mean, watching Mark Sanchez and, again, I haven't seen all the games he's played in, but as far as so far in this Eagles team, that was the best Mark Sanchez effort. Now, he didn't throw any interceptions. There was one fumble that, now obviously it wasn't like the butt fumble a couple years ago on Thanksgiving, but, it was one where, Mark Sanchez was getting ready to throw and it was kind of just knocked out of his hands, and, maybe it was some bad offensive line play there, but I mean, other than that, Sanchez, he only had one touchdown pass, but he made a lot of great throws here, and that, there was some things that he did that Nick Foles would not do, or would not have done, and oddly enough, some of that was even Mark Sanchez running a little bit of the read option, actually, keeping it. They did that, very early in the game, and then they kind of like saved it a little bit, I guess, and used a little bit of read option later on in the game, and Mark Sanchez had a few runs. But I mean, however you want to look at it, early on in the game, he had obviously a touchdown run off the read option, and I mean, everybody seemed fooled on that play, and surely enough, I guess Dallas, they used it as a surprise element. They didn't, Dallas did not expect Mark Sanchez to keep it, and then suddenly Sanchez keeps it, runs it in for a touchdown, and it's one of those uh-oh kind of things. And later on, there were a couple late in the game. I mean, third quarter, whatever. There was a couple nice runs by Mark Sanchez. Again, they kind of used the read option a little bit, even though Mark Sanchez, like Nick Foles, was not really doing the technical QB slide that you would normally hope that a quarterback would do. I guess it didn't really matter because he didn't fumble the ball or anything. He didn't let go of it before the referees blow the play dead like they did that one week with Nick Foles and against the Rams. So that was all in all, it was Mark Sanchez's best performance so far. But then again, I mean, I thought it was only a matter of time until this Dallas Cowboys defense kind of looked a little more like the defense we were familiar with last year. And yeah, I mean, it was quite a scene. I mean, watching them, again, I mean, they were Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were pointing this out, how it's only like early in the second quarter, and they're showing, Jason Witten on the sideline was, he's normally, calm and collected or whatever, kind of yelling with the tight end coach or whatever, and whoever else, and Des Bryant is like trying to, hype up this defense while, all the defensive players are sitting there, with their, I don't know, their oxygen, masks kind of things or whatever, trying to get their breath back, and they're huffing and puffing, and it doesn't look like they care at all what Des Bryant is saying, and it was just quite a scene and quite a treat for the Philadelphia Eagle fans, obviously watching the game, and obviously much to the chagrin of the Dallas Cowboy fans out there who again, this was their worst loss of the season by far, I'm sure, and certainly one of the biggest wins. Well, maybe, like I said, perhaps in my opinion, the biggest win so far of the Chip Kelly era here in his second year here. But then again, I mean, if they beat the Seahawks, I mean, well, we'll see how the game goes and everything, how it plays out. I mean, it's going to be tough, obviously, to surpass what they did against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I mean, maybe maybe if they win a playoff game this year, or maybe we'll see what they do in the playoffs. But the bottom line is that's a tough win to top down the stretch here in the season. As far as you want to talk about, big and enjoyable wins, that was obviously that was on Thanksgiving. Let alone that, I mean, obviously that was huge for the Chip Kelly era so far. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. 610-683-4859 is a number to get in, or as usual, you can send thoughts on the Facebook page on facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show on, predictions here with what's going on with the Eagles, and in looking back on this Eagles-Cowboys game. We'll have more discussion on that, as well as, playoff scenario talks and some other things in the realm of Philadelphia sports that, unlike the Eagles season and the way things are looking pretty good as of late, obviously the other seasons aren't looking too good for, a couple of other Philadelphia teams, unfortunately. So,
oh God,
yeah,
these are suffering, and this is our moment.
Yeah,
of
we'll
great
talk
despair.
about those as well, right here on the Tyler Werner Show today, right here on Kutztown Radio.
Tune in to Notice Latinas Sundays from 1 to 2 here on the Radio Voice, KUR, for the best in Latino news and commentary and music as well. It's Notice Latinas Sundays from 1 to 2 right here on KUR, the Radio Voice of Kutztown University.
It's Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us.
Although it might not seem like it, Mars is more than just a barren wasteland of smooth red rock. Valleys, mountains, plains, volcanoes, and gullies cover its surface. In fact, Mars is home to the highest mountains and deepest valleys within the solar system. Its highest mountain, Olympus Mons, stretches 3 times as high as Mount Everest, while its deepest system of valleys, the Valles Marineris, are roughly 6 times as deep as the Grand Canyon, and run close to the width of Africa in length. These Earth-like landforms can't help but beg the question, what formed these massive geological features? Scientists believe the valleys on Mars were formed from the rifting of the planet's crust as it got stretched. However, some of these valleys, channels, and gullies contain sediment layered within them, suggesting that flowing water not only existed on Mars, but could have helped create these geological features. The many mountains and volcanoes on Mars were formed by hot spots of lava that seep to the surface and harden to create massive mountains and shield volcanoes. These mountains are believed to be bigger than those on Earth due to the low gravity and high eruption rates of volcanoes. Very limited tectonic plate movement on Mars also keeps the hot spots and crust stationary. This ensures that the lava always flows up in the same area to create massive volcanoes over time. There are so many of these volcanoes on Mars that there are actually separate volcanic provinces. The Tharsis province is where the Olympus Mons is located, which was formed from one single hotspot that was active for thousands, if not millions of years. Tharsis also features Alba Mons, the largest volcano in our solar system by area. It was formed by multiple, extensive hotspots, giving it a very large area and unnaturally small slopes. The Elysium province contains 3 main volcanoes, Elysium Mons, Hyades Tholis, and Albert Tholis. This province also contains large channels running through its edges, containing layers of sediment, which supports the idea that the channels were formed from a large release of groundwater. This shows that the formation and structure of the geological features on Mars and Earth are very similar. I'm John Freeman, and this has been The Red Planet.
Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us. Stay tuned to KUR for more telescopic topics, and for more information or to hear the segment again, click on the Telescopic Topics icon on the KUR website at www.kutztown.edu/KUR. Telescopic Topics is a production of the KU Physical Sciences Department and is recorded by the KU astronomy students in the studios of KUR. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
It's 6:47 on this December 2nd edition of the Tyler Werner Show, the post-Thanksgiving week edition, as we are, we're coming down to the stretch here for the NFL season right now. We got Seattle coming up this Sunday for the Philadelphia Eagles. Then we got a home game for home rematch against the Dallas Cowboys, obviously. And then you got, two division games, I guess you want to call it, against two division teams that obviously are are way out of it, being the Washington Redskins and then the New York Giants coming down. As far as the end of the season goes here now, I mentioned, there's several different scenarios that can play out. A lot of different scenarios, actually, as far as the Eagles goes. But, I think right now, it's not asking too much. I think if the Eagles just win one of the next 2 games at home, which, again, I can't see them losing two games in a row at home. Now, some people would say that the Cowboys, they're really going to be in revenge mode come when they have to play the Eagles again, up at Lincoln Financial Field. And I don't know how big of a factor it'll be when they lost so big. What might be on their mind is that, again, the defense, now coming into Lincoln Financial Field, I know the Cowboys have been pretty good on the road, but this season. But again, in recent weeks, they just, they haven't quite been the same team, I would say, and they really got exposed by the Eagles on one occasion. Now, if the Eagles lose to the Seahawks this week at home, again, that might remotivate them to say, all right, we got to bounce back and we got to beat the Dallas Cowboys again. We can't let them come into our home and beat us. Right after beating them as badly as they did. That kind of sets a standard, I would think, that you got to be ready to beat these guys again coming to home this time. So I don't know, that's part of the way I look at it. And again, I just, maybe the game of matchups it could be too. The Eagles, the way they exposed that offensive line that was, again, getting a lot of praise throughout the season, and they deserved it, but, that offensive line, but the Eagles really had their way with them, and Tony Romo was just, going down and just taking sacks because they didn't want to get tackled. He didn't want to, I guess, he didn't want that, that possible injury to occur, maybe. I don't know. You just never know. And, again, credit to the Eagles there. But, I think most likely they win, they win either against Seattle or they win against Dallas at home. And they win their last 2 games, obviously. They should be easy wins. Then, essentially what you're looking at is a 12-4 finish for the Eagles. And I think with the way that the Cardinals are kind of crumbling a little bit here and having issues down the stretch, and they have a tough schedule still on their plate. We just saw them lose to Atlanta. The way I look at it, they might finish 2-2 in their last 4 games here. Again, against pretty much division opponents mostly. Then that would leave them finishing 11-5, and the Eagles would avoid a tiebreaker there. Now whether 11-5 would win the division for Arizona, I guess remains to be seen. But either way, it would probably be enough to get them a wild card spot. Given that Detroit will probably be the other wild card team in the mix here, and that Arizona, and then you look at it that way, Dallas. There's no way they'll finish better than 11-5 at this point. They're not going to win out, obviously. So, Dallas will, probably lose at least one more game. Maybe to obviously Indianapolis is one of them. And who knows? Again, maybe they lose another one to the Eagles. Maybe the Eagles are just going to be in Dallas's head after the way they beat them that badly. I don't know. So, you look at that, and at best, the Cowboys will finish 11-5, and the Eagles, again, with this scenario, the Eagles finish 12-4, and then you have Seattle, who, even if Seattle does beat the Eagles this week, it might be asking a lot, for Seattle to win the rest of their games on the schedule. I mean, they still got some tough division games here, so we'll see how those play out. I mean, we saw what the Rams did to the Oakland Raiders this past week, and we've seen the Rams actually be pretty decent in recent weeks and beat some good teams, including the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks. So, interesting to see how they factor in, because they're not, even though they're not going to make the playoffs, they're still not a team to be taken lightly, as they're kind of like a spoiler kind of team. So, you look at it that way, and it's very possible that the Eagles get the second seed here, because at worst, Green Bay will finish 12-4 here. As far as tough games left on their schedule, they got at Buffalo, but they still should be able to win that game. But Buffalo, they're a little desperate right now, and at Buffalo, it could be an interesting game certainly. But I would still think that the Packers could win that game, and then not only that, I mean, I guess they host Detroit in the last game of the season, but actually the history goes actually that Detroit has not won at Lambeau Field since 1991. So basically, since the year I was born, my entire lifetime, the Detroit Lions have not won in Green Bay. That's just, that's astounding right there. So, again, I mean, Aaron Rodgers at home, I mean, revenge game for them. I don't see them losing for a second time to the Lions. So I would think that the Packers do not finish any worse than 12-4. So, which would essentially give them the first seed, unless Seattle wins out or whatever. Unless in fact, the Eagles, perhaps finish 13-3 and win out. I don't see that happening, but if that were to happen, I mean, that's the only way the Eagles could get home field advantage, is if Green Bay does not win out, and if the Eagles were to perhaps somehow win out. But I don't. That might be asking a little too much out of Mark Sanchez and the rest of the Eagles, but. That's that would be the only circumstance there. But I think looking down the stretch here, if they win one of the next two games, I think it's very possible they finish 12-4, and that could very well mean a second seed and a first round bye in the playoffs. So that would definitely be pretty interesting. Now, from the KUR Notebook, attention KU community, the German Cultural Heritage Center will be hosting its annual Christmas on the Farm on December 6th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the German Cultural Heritage Center. Fun activities and culture for everyone from age 2 to 92. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. Now, without further ado, we'll move on to the on-air fantasy team selection. I guess part one. I guess you want to call it or whatever, of the on-air fantasy football game that on a weekly basis Tyler Fleming and I have played on throughout the semester. So again, we're actually running down to the wire here, and I guess since we won't have a show after next week's show, this might be the last time we're picking teams for the semester actually. So let me get that ready, and last week I'm not sure how much you were keeping track, Fleming, but you had, for instance, you had Andrew Luck, who had a field day, and you had, obviously the Rams defense, which just absolutely, they shut out the Rams, and obviously the Rams 52 shut out the Raiders, nothing there. So, between all that, the sacks and the turnovers and just everything, you were able to win big, 85 to my 49. So a good win right there. A good pick with the Rams defense, especially, just totally shutting down the Oakland Raiders. So all right, so yeah, with that in mind, we'll get to the selections, and I guess that means that I will make the first pick this week. I guess for the last edition, or I guess the last on-air fantasy selections for the semester. So yeah, let's fire that up. And I guess to start off, I'll go with quarterback as usual. Now, last week I had Ben Roethlisberger, so that that leaves me open to a lot of options here as far as picking a quarterback for the last time. Now let me look around here and see who all I can pick. You know what? I'm thinking the Packers are gonna host the Falcons this week. So I'm gonna say that the right pick for me to go here with is Aaron Rodgers for quarterback.
And my quarterback pick of the week is going to be Drew Brees.
All right. Drew Brees it is, and now you get to pick the next guy.
All right, I'm thinking of going with a running back, and for that I will pick Arian Foster.
All right. Arian Foster, and then let's see for me. Let's see here. I might. Cowboys play Chicago. Chicago's defense isn't too good, so yeah. I had Foster last week, and you had DeMarco Murray. So I guess this week we'll kind of do the old switcheroo, and I'll take DeMarco Murray for running back this week, and now we'll pick one more position before we hit halftime. Let's see. I'll just I guess I'll go down the row here a little bit, and I'll go with wide receiver next. And last week I had Antonio Brown and AJ Green. This week I guess as long as I have Aaron Rodgers throwing out there, I guess I'll have Jordy Nelson on my list of team members here. So yeah, we'll go with Jordy Nelson there for one right receiver.
All right, and I'm going to take Antonio Brown.
All right. Antonio Brown. And then, then we'll pick the rest later on as usual. And, we'll hit halftime on the Tyler Werner Show. And, we'll come back with, talking about other games that happened around the NFL this past week. Top 5 impressions around the league. Amongst other things right here in the Tyler Werner Show. So 610-683-4859 is the number to get in, or at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. We'll be right back after this.
Life can have some pretty embarrassing moments. Getting sick in the middle of class. Accidentally walking in on your parents celebrating a romantic evening. Paying too much attention to your text messaging rather than your driving.
Oh no!
Getting caught not listening to KUR.
Huh?
Now that's the most serious. 1670 AM. On your television at select times of the day at Service Electric Cable Channel 24, Hometown Utilicom Cable Channel 28, online at kur.kutztown.edu, and on your regular telephone by calling 610-465-7860. This is KUR Kutztown. Don't get caught without it.
In addition to all the other methods mentioned, if you're in the Lehigh Valley, you can listen to KUR and Service Electric 266. KUR can also be heard in select campus buildings like the MSU, Rickenbach, Stratton, Rec Center, and Keystone at 88.3 FM.
Nominated for Best College Radio Station at an institution with under 10,000 enrollment and winner of Best Use of Social Media, your news leader in northeastern Berks County, KUR Kutztown.
News, time for news.
The
KUR News Time is the top of the hour. I'm Mike Regensberger. A local man will spend from 1 to 23 months in jail for hitting a pedestrian with his vehicle last year and then leaving the scene. 26-year-old Morgan Boyer of the 1800 block of Salem Springs Road was sentenced on Monday. The crash happened last year at about 1:50 a.m. when police say Boyer's vehicle left the road and hit a pedestrian on the side of the road. The pedestrian suffered injuries that included deep cuts to his arm and forehead and a broken bone in his leg. Boyer's attorney asked for a light sentence, noting the fact that Boyer was honorably discharged from the Army and has post-traumatic stress disorder, but the judge expressed concern that Boyer did not turn himself in to authorities even the day after the crash, saying that he did not give the judge any reason to give him a break. And the inaugural Christmas in Kutztown will happen this Saturday from noon till 6 p.m. and will feature an array of activities, the Red Eagle reports, designed to evoke the feeling of Christmas's past. The event is organized by the Kutztown Community Partnership and will be centered in the 200 block of West Main Street. Checking KUR Sports, Kutztown University Radio would like to remind you that for late-breaking sports scores and news anytime from your KU Golden Bears, make sure you sign on to KUBears.com. That's KUBears.com. We have a couple of big games this week. Make sure you check out all the details on KUBears.com. Monsoon Mike says warmer weather after the wintry weather on Tuesday, followed by cooler weather once again. For late-breaking news, weather, sports, and traffic, sometimes before we can even get live on the air, make sure you like our award-winning Kutztown University Radio Facebook page or on Twitter at KU Radio. From KUR News, I'm Mike Regensberger.
Any views or opinions expressed on KUR are not necessarily those of Kutztown University, Kutztown University Student Government, Kutztown University Student Services Incorporated, KUR staff and management, or other affiliated organizations.
7:04 right here on the Tyler Werner Show, and it's now time to go around the NFL a little bit. Talk about some of the interesting results that we had past week in NFL outside of the Philadelphia Eagles blowout of the Dallas Cowboys. Number 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 here. Starting with number 5, the San Diego Chargers coming back at the end of that game against the Baltimore Ravens. Two teams fighting for wild card spots, or perhaps even division titles, depending how things play out here. Both 7-4 teams heading into this game, and the Chargers, when it's all said and done, they come up, win by 1 point, 34-33 against the Ravens, and they right now they're holding the 5th seed right now in the AFC. So big win for the Chargers coming down the stretch here, and that's big for that. That sets them apart from that big pack of teams, 6 to be correct, that are 7-5 in the AFC, vying for a 6th wild card spot in the AFC. So that's a big win right there. Another big win, certainly in the AFC amongst these teams, is the Buffalo Bills being one of those teams that moved to 7-5 against the Cleveland Browns. Another team fighting for either a wild card spot or division title. Bills kind of enter the mix a little bit more now after that pretty convincing win in the Cleveland Browns. And of course the Cleveland Browns bringing out Johnny Manziel late in that game and runs for a touchdown. I guess I don't know, a lot of controversy there. I guess whatever side of the fence you're on, if you believe Brian Hoyer should have been sat or not. They're still debating who their quarterback's going to be this coming week, and I don't know. I guess the old saying goes, if you have a quarterback controversy, do not have a quarterback. So I don't know. We'll see how that plays out, as to whether or not Johnny Manziel plays in this down the stretch here for the Browns. So that's another interesting result right there. Now, this is a bit more of a kind of an embarrassing kind of result here, but the New York Giants blowing a game to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Giants at one point, they had a commanding lead in this game, heading into the second half. But a strong third quarter from the Jaguars, and just a strong finish overall. And the Giants. I mean, if you're a Giants fan right now, I mean, you got to be pretty embarrassed being only the second team to lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars now this season. So blowing the game the way they did too. I mean, that was just. Got to be embarrassed about that. Now, number 4 is I'm sorry, number 2. I guess I almost changed the order there. You could go several different ways as far as this goes. I mean, there were a lot of games between, interesting playoff team, perhaps possible playoff teams here or whatever. But a big one to me this week was the Atlanta Falcons. Kind of maybe you want to say upset in here of the Arizona Cardinals. But again, maybe the Cardinals are coming a little bit more back down to earth here, but the Falcons, they come up with a big win here to kind of stay even with the New Orleans Saints. The Falcons win convincingly 29-18. Hosting the Arizona Cardinals, but still, I mean, the Falcons were having trouble winning outside of their division, and the first team they beat outside of their division this season is the now 9-3 Arizona Cardinals. So, big win for the Falcons to stay, kind of stay at the top of that weak division, but the Saints as well are 5-7, so we'll see how that division plays out. But number 1 for me this week, is obviously it's got to be the Green Bay Packers beating the New England Patriots 26-21. I mean, again, the Patriots were riding a huge winning streak, and the Packers really showed how Lambeau Field, how tough it is to play in Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers just continuing to play lights out. Best quarterback in the league right now, and whatever else. Maybe playing against the other best quarterback of the league in the AFC, but at Lambeau Field, I mean, an advantage to Aaron Rodgers there in the against the New England Patriots. So it just goes to show you. I mean, at Lambeau Field, certainly they are a tough team to beat. So 5 letters. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, really good at home as always, and relax. Yeah, if they get that first seed in the NFC, I mean, it's going to be tough for anybody to go up to Lambeau Field and beat them, and who knows? Perhaps the Patriots and the Packers game this past week was somewhat of a Super Bowl preview. Obviously, it's the Super Bowl is going to be played in Arizona on a neutral field. If obviously if those two teams are to make it, but I mean, possible Super Bowl preview, but then again, we never know. That's why we have the playoffs. We got first we got we got to take it week by week and see where everybody falls in the mix here. Now, obviously, one of the themes of today's show, as I mentioned, well, I mean, obviously, it's obviously one of the themes is, the Eagles, just stomping on the throats of the Dallas Cowboys and basically taking the division lead and really having an advantage over the Dallas Cowboys that, again, they were hyped up as, being one of the best teams right now, and suddenly it looks like the Eagles kind of they kind of just yanked the carpet right out from under them, and
interception.
Yeah,
now our side's got the ball. Sorry.
Yeah, it really just taking the advantage here down the stretch from the Dallas Cowboys, and amongst other things. But again, as far as scenarios go here, like I said, the Eagles. I mean, they can either beat the Seahawks or beat the Cowboys again at home. They're pretty much good for a 12-4 record, and that, depending on what the Cardinals do and what the Seahawks do and everybody else, it's probably, good enough for a second seed in the NFL playoffs. And right now, the Packers down the stretch here, they have the advantage as far as getting the first seed in the playoffs goes for the NFC. But very well, very well so the Eagles could get second seed. Now let's say the Eagles do happen to lose the next two games, and finish at 11-5 as a result, most likely, and that would obviously probably tie them with, as far as win totals goes, that would probably tie them with, perhaps both the Cardinals and both the Seattle Seahawks. And then, so basically it's like, take your pick. Whoever wins that division between the Seattle Seahawks and the Cardinals will most likely then obviously have a tiebreaker win over the Eagles. So that would pretty much bump the Eagles down to the third seed, because obviously the winner of the NFC South at very best will of course be 9-7 at the very best. Again, the record doesn't really matter. Maybe 8-8, 7-9 will win that division. Even 6-10 could even win that division, depending how things shake out here. But most likely, some 7-9 or 8-8, somebody wins that division, and they'll play the fifth seed in the NFL playoffs, obviously for the NFC. But as far as the Eagles goes, if the Eagles finish 11-5, if they were like to lose the next two games, then that would probably mean that they'll have the third seed, because either the Cardinals or the Seattle Seahawks will have both beaten the Eagles, and they'll get the nod for the division titles as a result of that. And now also finishing 11-5, like I said, if at very best, the Cowboys finish 11-5 as well as the Eagles, which I kind of mentioned before, that was possible to happen. But then again, I think the Cowboys are starting to come down to earth a little more. Even if that were to happen, the Eagles would pretty much have the advantage there, even if they lost to the Cowboys, because again, the Cowboys lost to the Redskins earlier in the season, so the Eagles would get the advantage there and win the division. And then that would either, depending how it plays out, that would either put the Cowboys at either the fifth or sixth seed, depending how the Detroit Lions finish out, or depending how the Cardinals finish out, as well as the Seahawks. Because the thing is, again, the Cowboys, they have a win against Seattle. So if Seattle was to finish with the same record as the Cowboys and neither team wins the division, then that would mean that Dallas has an advantage over Seattle because they beat them earlier in the season. Whereas on the other hand, if Arizona is, say, perhaps going to finish with the same record, Arizona would have an advantage over Dallas for the wild card spot. So given that they beat the Cowboys a few weeks ago, so obviously a lot of interesting scenarios there as far as the playoffs are for the Eagles coming down the stretch here. Now, let me turn to the KUR notebook again, because we have, of course, we always have to, announce what's going on around the community here at Kutztown University. Attention KU community. KUR and Eckes Gallery are teaming up to help promote and support the local arts. Noise is an Eckes Gallery performing arts event and will be held on December 5th, starting at 5 p.m. Everyone is welcome to attend. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. Now, normally we have a Flyers game on, well, if not another day, normally, or if not right now, normally sometime on a Tuesday, although we haven't really had a Flyers game in recent weeks on a Tuesday, but actually tonight we do have a Flyers game taking on the San Jose Sharks, and because that's over on the West Coast, the puck doesn't drop until 10 p.m. So how about that? I'll actually be able to get home and get food ready or whatever, take a shower, I guess, whatever else. I'll have time to get ready and actually sit down and be able to watch a Flyers game. Normally it's like a full Flyers game here. Normally that's something we go till 8 o'clock here in the Tyler Werner Show, so a lot of times, and then driving home, that's normally I don't really see the whole game. I catch some of it on radio, but I'll actually be able to sit down and watch a Flyers game on. And I, since it was a cold day, it was kind of a winter-like day. I had my Flyers winter hat on today, so hopefully, maybe the Flyers can put something together tonight and win a game for a change, because now they're I mentioned last week how things were not looking good for them in recent weeks, and sit here today and things are no different. Taking a look back on the past week of the Flyers, they lose at the Detroit Red Wings 5-2, and then Friday and Saturday night they got back to back with the New York Rangers, one at home where they get shut out 3-0. Another shutout. The week before that, the Rangers had also shut out the Flyers, and the Islanders had also shut out the Flyers on Monday. And then the next night, maybe a chance for revenge, a chance to bounce back, and the Flyers fall to the New York Rangers, this time at New York, 5-2. Very disappointing week here for the Flyers, and they just, they're now riding a 4-game losing streak, another 4-game losing streak, and the only team that, they've beaten before their other losing streak that they had was the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they're just, along with the Flyers now, they're now at the bottom of the Metropolitan Division in the, in the Eastern Conference. So I don't know what happened really to this Flyers team, but they just, things just continue to look down right now for the Flyers, and that's a little hard to believe when they got Jacob Voracek and Claude Giroux, obviously two very talented players, but other than that, it's just they just don't have enough depth around them or whatever. They're having all kinds of problems, and certainly there's some games that are just getting shut out. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've been shut out 3 times in their last 7 games here. So obviously, things are not looking good right now for the Flyers, and hopefully tonight, with my full attention, maybe they can, maybe they can pull something out here against the San Jose Sharks, kind of a middle of the pack team over in the Western Conference, and then tomorrow they got the Anaheim Ducks. So yeah, we'll see what they can maybe they can put together tonight. All right, now it's time to hit the next break. So number to get in, 610-683-4859. That's the number to get in, or at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. It's the Tyler Werner Show, and it's right here on Kutztown Radio.
You're listening to the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUO.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
So we've got our neighbor Paul coming over tonight for a barbecue, which is why I prepared a delicious lemon rosemary steak marinade from my special collection of old family recipes. To make sure the steaks are extra tender, I left them marinating out on the counter overnight, just like Nana used to.
Maria may mean well, but without food safety, it never ends well. Always thaw or marinate foods in the refrigerator at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below, or you could make your friends and family really sick. Maria's neighbor Paul didn't think twice about the steak he ate until he was presenting his company's financial forecast to the board. That's when a sudden bout of food poisoning made it explicitly clear that profits weren't the only thing on the rise. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov. You'll learn the right steps as Maria does everything wrong. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
.23 right here on tonight's edition of the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio. As we're slowly coming to the end of the semester already here, December 2nd. I mean, next week is finals week. So, hey, that's, on one hand, we don't, won't be, breaking things down every week on the Tyler Werner Show from 6 to 8 p.m. But, I guess on the other hand, no more school for about a month, and you got the holidays coming up, so that'll be nice, certainly, as the semester comes to a close. Now, I mentioned, I've been talking about all these playoff scenarios and everything for the Philadelphia Eagles, and basically the general consensus, I think, that they either beat Dallas or they either beat Dallas again, or they either beat the Seahawks out of these two home games that they have the next couple of weeks. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that the Seahawks, in recent weeks they've looked kind of back to the form that we're used to seeing, at least for the past couple of weeks. Again, back-to-back 19-3 wins against division opponents. But, certainly they got more division games coming up. And, I would, as good as the Seahawks have been the past couple of weeks, and, as good as their defense has looked the past couple of weeks, it still might be asking a lot for them to win, go 4-0 the rest of their games when their schedule is not the easiest of schedules. So, we'll see how it plays out here. But I think as far as the Seahawks goes, it's certainly an interesting matchup here for the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's hard for me to have a prediction right here. Still 5 days out, before the game. But I would expect. I actually think that this. For a change, this might be a low-scoring game here for the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, I didn't expect them to shut down the Cowboys the way they did. Although it was very impressive what they were able to do. Des Bryant and DeMarco Murray, they didn't let him run all over the Eagles. We'll just say that. So, and certainly they got to Tony Romo. They were in his head. And, they picked him off, a couple of times, and, they really made him kind of go, fall back down to earth a little bit. So, as far as the Seahawks offense is concerned, obviously Russell Wilson can make plays with his legs. He's a smart quarterback and everything, and I've talked about it before, the way he just all of a sudden he can just spin out of a sack one way and suddenly turn a third, perhaps a third and long into a suddenly a first down run and a fresh set of downs, and that can, in some sense, that can be demoralizing to a defense. And so that's one factor here. And obviously, you got Marshawn Lynch, some AKA beast mode, some some guys will say. Certainly, a guy that the Eagles defense, they may have to do some gang tackling with here. Now, people say how the Eagles, they're like a middle of the pack run defense in terms of how the ranking goes, and I don't. That takes into account the entire season so far, and including the very first early games of the season, and I just look at how more recently how they've been, and how they managed against DeMarco Murray pretty well. How they fared against him. Again, they only allowed DeMarco Murray not even 3.5 yards per carry, and if I'm not mistaken, I mean he was close to 5 yards a clip there. So that's that's a good thing for the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll see we'll see what they do to this Marshawn Lynch, if they can game plan against him well and at least hold him down a little bit, like they did to DeMarco Murray. But again, I mean, Percy Harvin's gone from the Seahawks, whether right or wrong there. But so I mean, as far as weapons go in the passing game, I mean, they don't, they're not necessarily going to light it up. But again, I mean, it's a matter of Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson's legs and his ability to make some plays. Maybe they have Michael Kendrick spying Russell Wilson, like he might be the most the fastest, maybe most athletic linebacker to do that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Connor Barwin did a good job of that against what was a less mobile Cam Newton about a month ago. So, but we'll see how it plays out here. But I think the Eagles' defense, I mean, they can hold up here a little bit, and I think this might be a departure from what we're used to as far as scoring goes here, because it's going to be tough to score in this Seahawks defense. The Eagles themselves, they're going to have to run the ball well, and I know that LaShawn McCoy, he's been good the past couple of weeks, and I'll admit, I mean, a couple of weeks ago I was sitting here and I was saying, will the real LaShawn McCoy please stand up and stuff like that, but obviously the past couple of weeks, Nick Foles, or I'm sorry, that LaShawn McCoy has looked like the special dude, as Nick Foles would say.
This guy is a special dude right here.
Yeah, I was trying to set that up there, I guess, and in the process I rolled out the wrong name, but I mean, then again, it's the end of the semester, so maybe I'm looking for a bit of a break here from classes. The LaShawn McCoy had probably his best game of the season. He had that one fumble, and he had that. Well, there was like one play where it was like ruled a fumble initially, but because his butt was down on the ground, he was ruled down upon further review. So, some people kind of joked that it was like the non-butt fumble in a sense. Considering that he was, upon further review, he was ruled down, and then the ball came out or whatever, was ripped out by the Cowboys, and so, the Eagles, they were in scoring range there at that point, and so that kept that drive going, and that just continued. The Eagles then just continued to drive the nail into the coffin right then and there. So, that other than one fumble though early in the game by LaShawn McCoy, 160 yards I believe on the ground, and he had a touchdown run. LaShawn, he looked more like himself there, and that's good. And for a second week in a row now, LaShawn McCoy has looked, he's playing at that high level, and that's that's good to see. I guess you can't, just maybe when you wanted to count him out, he starts to kind of get back to his form that we're more familiar with, and maybe LaShawn McCoy still has more left in the tank, and maybe we were a little misled by some of the struggles he was having throughout the season, and maybe he's quote unquote peaking at the right time. So I don't know that, but certainly great performance out of him, and he got that. I guess it was that gobbler trophy award or whatever, and I don't know. It doesn't even look like a trophy anymore. It looks more like a plaque, but certainly he, again, I mean, great effort out of him. Sanchez was good, certainly. But I guess before, as we kind of proceed through here a little bit more, I guess we'll kind of hit the call out of the week in a sense, right here in the Tyler Werner Show. So
it's time for Tyler Werner's call out of the week.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all. What's the matter with you? Loser! You're a loser! Are you kidding me?
Well, I have a microphone, and you don't.
So you will listen to every word I have to say!
now this call out of the week kind of dates back a little bit to even last week before the game. Kind of in that time between Tuesday and the kickoff on. Well, even going through that game, I guess, on that Thanksgiving Day game with the Cowboys and the Eagles, I guess, but starting off with last week, Riley Cooper, when he kind of he talked about how Jeremy Maclin, I guess, was, he wasn't, now whether he was joking or not to some extent, I guess you kind of, when it comes to, a guy playing for a contract, where I guess it's not something you joke about, but he, last week in an interview, he commented on how, Jeremy Maclin or whatever, like one snap out of every 5 or something that they're supposed to come off or whatever for a snap or something like that. They're supposed to rotate a little more, I guess, than Jeremy Maclin has been rotating. And, I guess Riley Cooper was a little question on this, and he kind of said how, Jeremy Maclin's playing for a contract or whatever, so maybe, he doesn't sub in as often as he or sub out or whatever as often as he should. Jeremy, that wasn't well received by Jeremy Maclin, I guess, or whatever. And let's keep in mind, Riley Cooper, he only has 1 touchdown reception all season, actually. His production, again, it's kind of like he's stealing money in a sense. Even J.J. Watt has more touchdown receptions than Riley Cooper does this year. That's hard to believe.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all.
Not only that, Riley Cooper, from what I can gather, he's had more drop, he's had more drop touchdown receptions that, should have been receptions than touchdown receptions this year. So, he doesn't, I don't know if he quite has room to talk there when it comes to that. But anyways, that was last week before the game even happened. Now, of course, in this game it was memorable. Late in the game, maybe it was like the fourth quarter at that point, or whatever, or late in the third, or the game was wrapped up here. But, and I guess I have sort of what this argument was about between Mark Sanchez and Riley Cooper, I guess, to some extent. But of course, there was like a bit of an argument at one point when the Eagles were up, they were up by 20 or whatever, and basically the game wrapped up. But still, Mark Sanchez at one point says, like, you can like make out what he says. You can just kind of lip read what he's saying here to Riley Cooper, like, you got to listen to me, and that's supposedly, Riley Cooper was out of position or whatever, and then it was, after that, that argument, I guess, or whatever, that controversy between the two, then of course, for those who watched the game closely, on the very next play, Riley Cooper was, running a drag route or whatever across the middle of the field, wasn't looking back towards the ball, and Sanchez, kind of just dinged one right off of him there, and he wasn't even, Cooper wasn't even looking, and, some would argue, some wonder whether that was, whether that was done on purpose or what, but, you would think, too, that, maybe Riley Cooper ought to be looking back at, for the ball there, but he wasn't, so, the ball just kind of dinged off of him, and, from Sanchez there, so that was that, but from CBSSports.com, it was actually, it was discussed in the press conference yesterday with Chip Kelly, what this, and it was obviously Mark Sanchez, it was brought up in press conference footage with him as to what this spat was about, I guess you could call it, between Sanchez and Cooper during the game. So to kind of assist here, I have an article up. The Eagles were up 20 points on the Cowboys in the fourth quarter of Thanksgiving's Day game when quarterback Mark Sanchez snapped on wide receiver Riley Cooper, presumably because Cooper wasn't lined up properly and forced Sanchez to burn a timeout. Afterwards, Sanchez downplayed the outburst. "We're a family, and families get heated and get upset," he said. "That's the way it goes. Both of us had something to say. We said it, and that was it. I'd rather have something like that than a guy that's just uninterested and doesn't care, isn't ready to play, doesn't work as hard as Coop does. He's playing his butt off, and that's the best part about something like this. Neither of us took it any further. That's it. Right or wrong. We move on because we've got another team to play. Players get in each other's face all the time. In the scheme of things, this barely merits a mention." Except Chip Kelly weighed in on Monday, of course, in the press conference. So, as far as Mark Sanchez goes, he kind of just mentioned how, what went on the field there stayed on the field and everything else. So, it was just one of those things, I guess, where, your quarterback is kind of trying to get everybody on the same page there, take charge, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, it was, one of those, this is what you got to do, and this is what we got to do kind of, I guess, arguments, I guess, and it wasn't, I guess it wasn't something that would, be, I guess, taken personally or whatever, but, so that was that. That was his angle. He kind of just said, players argue. That's, players get in each other's face all the time, and that's, that's just the way the game is sometimes. You don't see I don't know, Nick Foles, I didn't see that happen too often, but it seems like Mark Sanchez is, really taking charge here of the team as of late, and is, really embracing that, as of late, this is my offense. Well, in a sense that I'm the quarterback pretty much, and kind of run the show here. So now, as far as Chip Kelly and his angle of the story, he had to weigh. Well, here's how he weighed in. They were arguing over what to eat for Thanksgiving after the game, Chip Kelly said. I don't think either of them are going to be here this week because they're pissed off about it. So that was Chip Kelly's, I guess, sarcastic way of kind of just like sticking it at the media. But guys yell at guys all the time. I don't know why that's a big deal, Kelly continued. You could catch someone yelling at somebody probably on every play. It's an emotional game by emotional players, and I think they're playing at a high level. When guys make mistakes, they're not too happy about it. That's part of the game. I'm surprised at the line of questioning. That's not the first time people have screamed and yelled at each other out here. There's guys screaming at each other all the time. Listen to my headset. So, yeah, that was pretty much Chip Kelly's take there. I mean, yeah, kind of just, putting it down as, they're arguing over Thanksgiving dinner. Typical Chip Kelly sarcasm there in his press conferences, and yeah, I mean, when that was happening, I didn't really have a problem with it, but, it's just but as far as Riley Cooper goes, I mean, he, only having one touchdown reception all season long. He's not, hasn't been playing like a number 2 wide receiver this season. That's the bottom. Been playing like a number 5 wide receiver or something. Number 5 will always not that kind of number 5, but like a number 5 receiver. But anyhow, so I guess as far as call-outs of the week goes, I don't know. Riley Cooper the past week, I guess you could say, has been a little, I don't know, between the comments with Jeremy Maclin. And kind of, I guess getting caught with his pants down this game here, to Mark Sanchez, and then getting dinged by the ball, not looking back at the quarterback for the ball on the next play. I mean, I guess that's worthy for getting called out this week. So yeah, that's that right now. And I guess we got one more break to hit right now before we close the show down for the day. So. With that in mind, it's the Tyler Werner Show, and it's right here on Kutztown Radio.
It's almost time for you to discover This Way Out. Hi, I'm coordinating producer Greg Gordon, inviting you to tune in to This Way Out, the international gay and lesbian radio magazine, here on Kutztown University Radio, 1670 AM.
1 to 1:30 on Thursdays here on the Radio Voice, KUR.
¿Sabía usted que el 80% de los estudiantes de KU no beben en exceso?
Colgando carteles de nuevo, ¿crees que ese cartel es realmente cierto?
Sí, es cierto. Soy una embajadora de la salud de KU y estoy familiarizada con el audit. Estudiantes de KU participan en el cribado de alcohol cada año. Utilizamos los exámenes de identificación de desorden del uso de alcohol. Esta es una forma sencilla de detectar e identificar las personas que están en riesgo de desarrollar problemas con el alcohol. Hemos aprendido que la mayoría de los estudiantes están tomando el cuidado de su negocio y centrarse en lo académico.
Parece que esta cosa de beber no es un gran problema. Puedo ver que esto es cierto, ya que la mayoría de mis amigos no beben.
¿Te gustaría conseguir un grupo de amigos para comer algo?
Suena muy bien. Mándame un mensaje posterio.
Kutztown Living, vecino a vecino.
Financiado con una donación a través de la tarjeta de control de licor de Pensilvania.
I love turkey on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that was going through my mind after the Eagles just totally destroyed the Cowboys last week on Thanksgiving. Obviously a big win for the Philadelphia Eagles. Moving to 9-3, obviously a big win there. Now, I wanted to, again, I mean, we're talking about playoff scenarios and everything. I've been talking most likely. I mean, now maybe the Eagles, they could finish 12-4, which, credit to Sal Paolantonio, who picked them to go 12-4, which I remember talking about before the regular season started.
I agree.
And way things could play out here, they could very well, finish 12-4 if they just win one of the next two games. Now, if say they did lose two games, I mean, say they lost to the Cowboys and in the Seahawks this week, and they finished 11-5. There's actually one more scenario I wanted to go through today, and it's actually it's like a bit of a nightmare ceremony actually, because there's actually a way that the Eagles could go 11-5. They could finish 11-5, and while it's not very likely, it's just something that, could you imagine if this kind of nightmare scenario happened? And I'll lay it out right now. The Eagles say they lose the next two games. They go, they finish 11-5, whatever. Dallas happens to win out and go 12-4. course, the Eagles lose to Seattle. Seattle and Arizona, for all we know, they could both finish 11-5. It does, but either team there for a wild card would have the advantage over the Philadelphia Eagles. And like I said, Cowboys finish 12-4, they win the division. Now, the Packers win their division with at least 12 wins, you would think. And, of course, Atlanta or New Orleans, they win the NFC South. They got a spot. As far as the last open wild card spot goes, say that the Detroit Lions, they could even finish 11-5, and still, because of the conference record, even though the Eagles have not played the Detroit Lions, the Lions, even though they could finish 11-5, the Eagles finish 11-5. Detroit would have a better conference record than the Philadelphia Eagles, and therefore the Eagles would miss the playoffs essentially at 11-5. So just process. How about that kind of scenario for a second? That's very unlikely to happen, but it just goes to show you, how many different scenarios there are here. Because I think Detroit, well, the Eagles, first of all, they swept the AFC South. They beat obviously they beat the Colts early in the season and the Jaguars the first two games. They beat the Texans and they beat Tennessee last week. So, but as far as NFC opponents goes, they lost to Arizona, they lost to San Francisco. They given this scenario, they would have lost to Seattle. So, right there, that's 3 NFC losses right there. They lost to Green Bay. So essentially, Detroit, who they lost to New England, and I'm not sure. Maybe they lost to Buffalo or somebody else. I'm not sure if it was Miami, but they may have a couple of losses that are out of conference, and essentially, for the most part, they would have a better conference record than the Philadelphia Eagles as a result. So that would be. Could you imagine the Eagles finishing 11-5 and missing the playoffs? As rare as it is, that is actually a possibility amongst the many scenarios here. But I think, and that just goes to show you how important one game could be here. But then again, like I said, the Cowboys would have to win the rest of their games to happen. And is that going to happen? It's that'd be unbelievable, especially considering the way the Cowboys have been in the past month, and the fact that they kind of stink at home for whatever reason, and they have the Indianapolis Colts coming down there. So I don't think that's going to happen. Now let's see, we got another little KUR notebook announcement to get through here. And it's a bit of a lengthy one here, so. Attention KU community, save the date for Saturday, December 6th, 2014. Obviously, Kutztown University Foundation and Alumni Relations will host Santa and Avalanche for a special Christmas time gathering on Saturday, December 6th from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. in the McFarland Student Union Multi-Purpose Room. Enjoy a hearty breakfast, craft activities, and cheerful seasonal music in the company of Santa and KU's own Avalanche. Children get a free photo with Santa. Register before December 2nd to take advantage of a discounted price of $10 for adults and $5 for children. To register, please contact the KU Foundation and Alumni Relations Office at 610-683-4110. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. And now, I mentioned earlier, I just mentioned a nightmare scenario here, but, I guess in a sense, a nightmare that actually could become a reality here, as far as Philadelphia sports goes, is the 76ers, if they just lost to the Spurs last night. Of course they are, which right now that puts them at 0-17, of course, having continuing to have the miserable and winless season.
Oh God, ease
they,
our suffering in this our moment of great despair.
Here's the thing: if they lose this next game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, they will have tied the record for the worst start in NBA history. And at this rate, the Sixers could very well perhaps finish worse than that 7-win team or whatever it was a long time ago, or whatever 9-73 it was. They could very well finish worse than that at the rate that they're playing at. And just the fact that they have like a lot. They have a team of, for the most part, other than the obvious, I guess, like chess pieces, if you want to call them, that they're hoping that they can build with in a few years and mold into a championship contender. Other than that, they pretty much got a bunch of like D-League players out there, which again is a lot to do with why they are continuing to lose game after game here. But you see that they're quickly approaching this losing streak record, and you begin to wonder, when is enough at least? And tomorrow they got the Minnesota Timberwolves. We'll see. I know that's possibly I don't know, maybe it's a possible winning game, but then again, you play these teams, and which team wants to be that team that is the first team to lose to this Sixers team? It's just one of those cases. And then after that, they got the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I believe if they lose to the Thunder, then the Sixers will have made history, and not the kind of history you want to make. The worst start in NBA history. The only team to then start out 0-19 essentially. And then the thing is, the game after that, they have the Detroit Pistons, which out of all the games on the schedule, again, could perhaps be one of the few wins that the Sixers could actually get this season. As bad as the Pistons are. So I don't know. I think they lose tomorrow to the Timberwolves, then they'll have tied the record. And if they lose to the Thunder after that, then the 76ers, this Sixers team will have set the new record for the all-time worst start in NBA history. The only team to start 0-19 ever. So that'd be horrible. And then not only that, I think not long after that they'd be approaching the worst losing streak of all time record in the NBA. So not only could they make that history, they could make even more history after that. The kind of history that you don't want your team to make. So that's that right now. And I guess next week on the Tyler Werner Show, the last edition of the semester, I guess we'll be here to talk about whether or not that's in fact what happens. So should be an interesting weekend of basketball, seen as to whether or not this happens. All right, now, as usual, without further ado, we got to head back to on-air fantasy. I think as well for the last time this semester, and pick the rest of our teams. And we left off with me picking my first wide receiver. So we'll pick up where we left off, and Flamin, you'll have the next pick. So
alrighty, I think I'm gonna go with Odell Beckham Jr., another wide receiver.
All right, yeah, and of course, huge catch, the other week ago. That's basically all the Giants are right now. It's like Odell Beckham. That's had that crazy catch the other week ago, and certainly, if there's any signs of hope for this team in the future, it's maybe they can build around Odell Beckham next year. All right, so for my second wide receiver selection here, I went Jordy Nelson earlier. I think I'll have to go with Demaryius Thomas for for this last edition of On Air Fantasy. So they are taking on Oh no, I'm sorry. I have last week's schedule up. I'm looking at them. They just beat the Chiefs, but no, they have the Chargers, so they could they can get into maybe a shootout with them. So that we'll see how that pick goes with Demaryius Thomas. Okay, yeah. Now it's my next pick. I guess I'll go with tight end here, and oh no, I'm sorry. I just meant the Broncos at the Bills at home. For those who, if I just misled anybody, the Patriots had the Chargers next week, and that could be a shootout. But I would think the Patriots would win that game, and I would think that maybe bounce back from that Packers game. But then again, who knows? But either way, I would think Rob Gronkowski would have a big week, so I'm going to pick him for that matchup for my tight end position.
Once again, you steal my number one prospect. So that leaves me with Greg Olsen as my tight end.
All right, Greg Olsen it is. And now your next pick. I would assume you're going to go defense first.
You would be correct. Kicker. I'm going to pick the Minnesota Vikings for my defense.
All right, Vikings. Let's see who they take on. I didn't even see. They host the Jets. All right, yeah, probably a good pick there. And let's see, defense for me. Let me look across the board here and maybe I'll try to choose wisely here. Let's see. I don't, again, I mean, the Eagles are tough. It'd be tough to go with them just because you never know what could happen. But so therefore, I'll go with somebody else. I guess I will go with, given that the 49ers are taking on the Oakland Raiders. It's close by home, and if the Niners are in a desperate situation, I would think that the 49ers defense will be pretty good against this Oakland Raiders team. So yeah, I'll go with the 49ers defense, which not a defense we've really picked too much this season, but again, it's one of those games they should be playing. They they didn't do too bad against Seattle, so I would think that against the Raiders they won't fare too bad either. And that leaves us lastly with kicker as usual. So I think it's safe to say that the Eagles are going to be in field goal range a lot. So Cody Parkey has been reliable, so I'll go with him for the last pick here for kicker.
It only seems fitting that your last pick is a Philadelphia player.
Yeah.
And for my kicker, I'm going to pick Mason Crosby. He's done well for me in the past, so hopefully that trend continues.
All right. So yeah, that's that rounds that out for the rest of the game here. So yeah, that's that'll do it, and that'll wrap things up for the Tyler Werner Show today on Kutztown Radio. So thanks everybody for you're tuning in, and stay safe out there in this wet wintry like kind of weather. And we'll be back next week for the last time for the fall semester to discuss what goes down with the Eagles and the Seahawks this weekend, as always. So with that in mind, we will cut the show off here and turn it over then to Aces Wild with Tyler Fleming. So everybody have a great rest of your week, and I'll be back right here next week to talk as always.
KUR Kutztown.